Bill Donohue. You are the president and CEO of the Catholic League. You are a defender of matters of faith and morals. You are a constant presence in the media, maybe a thorn in the side of, let's say, the ruling elite. And we'll get into that in a moment. And a staunch defender of the Catholic faith. You have a lot of defenders and supporters out there. And you have a brilliant and brand new book out called The War on Virtue. Tell us about the book. Why did you write it? I will begin by saying it seems to crystallize a lot of what you have been saying for many years and brings those ideas up to date. Welcome, Bill Donohue.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Right. This is my 10th book, and I've dealt with the subject of freedom and civil society and religion and morals in most of my books. I guess you would say in all of my books. Some of them are explicitly Catholic and others more like an analysis of the ACLU. But it all comes back to the question of having the good society. We all want to live in the good society. We don't live in the good society today, I don't think, because the ruling class is undermining what I call the vital virtues. In order to succeed, I studied a lot of different groups and individuals. In order to succeed, you need to possess three very special virtues. You must believe in personal responsibility. You must believe in self-control or self-discipline. And you must learn to persevere. Perseverance is very important. Now, if you embody these three, it doesn't guarantee success. But I can guarantee you this much. If you don't inculcate these values, you're not going to be a success. You can't be a success. You take a look at the great athletes that I just have a little bit of section in the book. Tom Seaver, the great Met pitcher, of course, the greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. You've got Michael Jordan, probably the greatest basketball player in history. All three were given God-given talent, but they all said we struggled. They all said we had to exercise hard work. We had to persevere. We had to exercise personal responsibility. We had to exercise self-control because otherwise they would not have succeeded. And I also looked at different groups. The four most successful groups in America today, as measured by education and income, would be Asians, Jews, Mormons, and Nigerians. They excel. And they excel precisely because they come from intact two-parent families where the vital virtues are taught. That is the key.
The subhead of your book is called How the Ruling Class is Killing the American Dream. So let's talk about the American dream. It seems to be at the core of the book also, and these vital virtues. But who is this ruling class we're talking about? We all imagine it's the CEOs and the elites that run the big tech. Are they the ruling elite?
Well, big tech is only one part of it. I mean, quite frankly, I've been doing this job now for 30 years, come July the 1st. And when I first took over, most of the anti-Catholicism was coming from the media, the entertainment industry, the arts, education, activist lawyer groups like the ACLU. What's happened, and this has happened very quickly, especially in the last few years, not only has government got involved, that was true going back to Obama in 2009 when he first took over. He won in 2008, of course. But we have something different. We have traditional institutions such as the FBI, the military, the healthcare industry, the corporations, the Forbes 500. They were generally either agnostic, didn't take a position on the issues of the day, or they were on the side of traditional moral values. But they've gone woke. They have gone left. So what I'm saying today, and this is one of the reasons I wrote the book, the ruling class, which is to say the elite decision makers in all of our major institutions in society, they have adopted the politics of the left. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I never thought they would capture these groups that have been more traditional minded. And to the extent that they are working against the vital virtues, and they are in many, many ways, is a shame. I also make perhaps the most controversial argument in the book, and that is that the ruling class has simply given up on African Americans. They've given up on Blacks. They don't believe in treating them as equals. They don't believe that Blacks can succeed like everybody else. I worked in Spanish Harlem. I taught Black and Puerto Rican kids. I work with Black kids as the faculty advisor to the basketball team at a small college, Catholic college in Pittsburgh. I've worked with African Americans a good part of my life. They can succeed like everybody else as long as you don't keep dropping the bar with low expectations. That's the white ruling class today. The average black person does not have to fear some crazy right-wing white supremacists. There are some of them out there. They have to fear the people who are claiming to be on their side, the decision makers, because they don't treat them as equals. That's a dirty little secret. The biggest racists in our society today are members of the white ruling class who really don't believe that blacks can cut it like everybody else.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that, and it makes a lot of sense the way you presented your case. Of course, the ruling elite and all of those who despise, let's say, the black community, in effect, what they would say, well, yeah, gee, we support welfare programs, we want to prop them up with some kind of support, but those on the conservative right want to withdraw all these supports, and they could care less about the poor and the black and the downtrodden.
Well, the attitude that I'm looking at here is one of patronizing. It's a very condescending attitude. This is what the left believes about blacks. And in fact, I go back to the 1850s to show some of the origins of it. I mentioned someone whose name most people never heard of, George Fitzhugh. George Fitzhugh in the 1850s was America's first sociologist. He was a man of the left. He was a progressive. He was on the side of black people. He's also a proponent of slavery. Now, people say, wait a minute, did you get something wrong here, Bill? You're telling me that he's on the side of blacks, but he's also in favor of slavery? Yes, because he said, these are not my words. He just basically said, they're basically stupid people. They're just going to cannibalize themselves. They can't cut it. And if we get rid of slavery, they're going to have to compete against the white man in a market economy. And they can't do that because they're inferior intellectually in every other such way. We should keep them as slaves because right now they're the freest people on earth. We take care of every one of their needs. Now, somebody might say, well, Bill, so you found one guy in the 1850s. Let's fast forward to the latter part of the century during the progressive era, Richard Ely. He came out and pretty much said the same thing as Fitzhugh. Blacks don't have the ability to compete with white people, so we'll take care of them. Now let's fast forward to 1988. Charles Murray writes a beautiful article called The Coming of Custodial Democracy. And therein he says that the future of Black America is that the white ruling class will be the custodians who will take care of them. It will treat them like Indians, wards of the state. Instead of being on a reservation in a rural area, they'll be in an urban area. And that's because the white ruling class, liberal though they are, and they say they're on the side of blacks. They always say they're on the side of blacks. How come blacks always lose with their decision making? Murray knew that this was the future. And that's what I'm saying today. Don't believe the rhetoric. If somebody says, I want to defund the police, if I'm against school choice, and you tell me with a serious face that you want to help black people, you know what black people want? They want more cops. They don't want to abolish the prison. This is not my opinion. All the survey data show this. Black people want school choice. They don't want to be consigned to the lousy public school that no white person in his right mind would send his kids to. So we can't rid of the rhetoric now. Look at the actual policy decisions. Now, in some cases, I will admit it's good intentions gone wrong. But in other cases, no. Some of these people know exactly what they're doing. And this is their way of taking care of the urban problem. That's why they like abortion. And they put their Planned Parenthood clinics in black neighborhoods, 80% of them. That's not a mistake.
The powers of the left are making it increasingly difficult for millions of Americans to realize their dreams, you write in the book.
Yes, in so many different ways. We just mentioned education. How in the world can you expect to succeed in life if you cripple education? What we're teaching now, I'm talking about the progressive education, education. They're teaching that it's an example of whiteness. Again, these are their words, not mine. It's an example of whiteness to insist on correct spelling, on correct arithmetic, on objective standards, on hard work, on reliance. Oh, really? So what do you want to teach the contra? That it's okay to be lazy? Should we teach dependency? Should we say that you can scramble any letters you want and make up any kind of figures you want? You want to build it? You want to drive your car over a bridge? built by an engineer who doesn't know how to add 2 plus 2. I mean, these people here, again, they are a small but very powerful part of the progressive education unit in this country. And that's what they believe. And equity education means instead of helping blacks who are at the bottom get to the top, we want to punish the ones at the top. They're called Asians. We got too many Asians succeeding. That's why Harvard and Yale have quotas against them. And the public elite high schools have quotas against them. And the private schools have quotas against them. So we're not going to insist on advanced placement. We get rid of the SAT. We'll get rid of all objective measures, and then everybody will be equal. Everybody knows that that's not the case. There are some people who are brilliant at a young age and others who are not for all kinds of different reasons. The idea that we're all equal in the eyes of God, yes. We should be equal in the eyes of the law. But the idea that we all come to the table with equal attributes is simply nonsense. Nobody in his right mind believes that. We have to give the vital virtues to the people who are at the bottom of the socioeconomic scale.
And those vital virtues are self-discipline, perseverance, and personal responsibility. And you make the point in the book is that that's just fading away in American society. It's not, there's no value on it. It's been diminished and undermined. If somebody doesn't persevere, work hard, have discipline, oh gosh, no, it's not their fault. They need, there's some other solution, a radical solution that's provided apparently by the radical left.
That's exactly right. And if you're talking about the vital virtues, you can't talk about them without talking about where they come from. They come first and foremost from the family. The nuclear family is under attack in our society. Black Lives Matter said we should destroy it. That's what they said, okay? It's taught by the Smithsonian Institute of African American History and Culture that the nuclear family is no better than any other. Don't believe this nonsense. All family relationships are equal. The one-parent family, the extended family, the cohabiting couples, and the like. That is simply not true. I have a Ph.D. in sociology. I've read all this work on this. The blue family is the nuclear family. We should emulate it. Now, we know that for all kinds of legitimate reasons, not everybody can have that. There's good reasons why that happens. But we shouldn't be undermining it, and we shouldn't be trashing it and belittling it. Why do we think that the Nigerians, for example, succeed so well? Now, they're black people, are they not? Are not Asian people, people of color? Notice 2 of the 4 groups, Nigerians and Asians that I mentioned, in addition to Jews and Mormons, are people of color. We are told by the left that people of color can't succeed in our society because of racial discrimination. How do you explain the Nigerians, the West Indians, the ones from the islands? How do you explain all the Asians, not just some of them? Because they come from intact families. That's why the average white guy, if he's a racist, wouldn't know the difference between a black guy from Nigeria who just got off the boat and a guy from Harlem. So why is it that the racial discrimination doesn't seem to impact on the Nigerians and the Asians? And they may experience some of it. I'm not saying they don't. But it's water off a duck. What really matters is that they can persevere because they've got the vital virtues. And if they do run into a racist, they're not going to let them declare themselves to be a victim and just throw in the towel. That's a big, big, big difference.
Bill, I'm trying to understand, how do we get to this point of near moral collapse in American society? I mean, there's some history to this which you write about, and, we don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but, we could start at the age of the Enlightenment, moral relativism, the Blame America movement, which you write about in the book, the 3 stages of that. How would you sum all of that up? Is it we've lost our faith, or, take us through all of that?
Well, you're absolutely right, John, to mention the Enlightenment. And there's some good things that came out of the Enlightenment. The idea of equality before the law and its very liberal principles. But they also became very secular, and they attacked the Catholic Church. And they believed that they had a kind of almost superstitious belief in the wonders of science, quite frankly. And I'm all in favor of science. But they felt that, no, the time has come now. We don't need Christianity. We don't need religion. We are our own tutors. We can take care of things. Well, yeah, you've taken care of things real well. Look, Christianity teaches thou shalt not. Those are the 3 most dreaded words in the English language today to a secularist who says, don't ever tell me what I can do. Okay, fine. So you're going to go around willy-nilly, make up your own moral compass. Yeah, that's worked out real well. Look, We are all born as sinners. We believe as Catholics that there's such a thing as original sin. There's no such thing as utopia. The Enlightenment people compared the existing society to the ideal society, found it wanting. They had this idea of nirvana, they building utopia. There is no utopia. There's no utopia on earth. The only utopia that exists is in heaven and the afterlife. And we've seen the examples, quite frankly, in history, John, of all. I'm talking about the real terroristic ones. I'm talking about Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot. They all believed in utopia. They all believed we didn't need religion. They all believed they're going to create the good society. None of them believed in original sin. Now, they're the extremists. I understand that. But once you get away from the Judeo-Christian ethos, the belief that we're fallen people, but with the help of God, we can do well, sin is real, and take personal responsibility for ourselves. Once you get rid of that and say, well, that God is a fiction and truth is a fiction. That's the big one today. Truth is a fiction. That's the effect of the postmodernists now. Now we're into, this is beyond the Enlightenment. Now we're into the 1940s and 50s in Germany in particular, in France, and then eventually in the United States in the 60s. And once you get down that road that there's no such thing as truth, then yes, a man can be a woman can be a man can menstruate, a man can become pregnant. Listen, we shouldn't depopulate the asylums. We need to build more of them. Of course, you can't do any of these things, but this is being taught by the great savants, the great thinkers of our day. That's how far gone we have. This is what happens when you throw truth to the wind. And by the way, one other thing here, there was somebody who earlier on, before the postmodernists in the 1940s in Germany, who said that truth does not exist. His name was Adolf Hitler.
Wow. You in an interview recently, and I listened, it was fascinating. And there's this whole idea of the perfectibility of human nature and the human world. And I think, what's your opinion? I'm sure you're probably on the same level here. The big tech and a lot of the elites believe in the perfectibility of human nature, that we can eradicate all the world's problems. We can eradicate fully poverty. We can make everybody absolutely equal and promote some kind of nirvana and perpetual happiness. Is that, which kind of points to a lack of faith among a lot of this class?
Well, everything you said is true. As a matter of fact, we have a report coming out either next week or the week after. We've done our own study of Silicon Valley. And everything you say has been backed up by data which we have taken from other people who have been the real experts in this. Yeah, half the people in Silicon Valley are atheists or agnostics, and of the rest of them, they're very, very hostile to religion. They believe they're like the new God. Look, we've been down this road before. We've tried this thing. This is just a new technology. If it's the same old song, you just take the question of poverty, which you quite rightfully mentioned. Poverty is not a function of money. If that were the case, then we have a lot of money in this country. Just give people all kinds of money and they'll get out of poverty. It's what you do with money. It's how you earn the money that matters. The Asians come over here. They can't speak or write English. And within a generation or two, their kid is the valedictorian in the class. Why? Because they make them work hard in the Korean grocery. That's why. And if you work for the family, you don't have to pay the minimum wage. And if the kid has a work ethic by working in the grocery store, that's likely to kick over to what he does as homework. Who does the most homework in society? Asians. Who does the least? African Americans. Is there a correlation between homework and academic success? Of course there is. And the reasons why the Asians do more homework is they have the work ethic built into them. Why do the Chinese insist that so many of their kids, for example, learn the violin? Because if you learn the violin, they don't care about music. If you learn the violin, you have to practice self-discipline. And if you practice self-discipline, that will carry over, in effect, the way you do your homework and succeed in school and in life. These things, you don't have to, I was going to say, you don't have to have a PhD to understand this. You have to just trust the ones with the PhDs. And I know I have one in this area, but too many of them have been blinded by ideology. If you take a look at the work of really good, solid social scientists, and there still are a number of them, you'll see everybody knows what common sense would know, what works and what doesn't work. You can't keep lowering the bar for people and expect them to succeed. The best thing to do is to help them clear the bar, not lower it.
No doubt you're getting pushback, and you will get pushback from a lot of groups who do not agree with you and strongly disagree with you. And they may say, oh, Bill, you want to go back to the bad old days. You want to go back to the days of poverty in America, where people went hungry and where our autonomy, our personal autonomy was controlled, and you had the church telling us to do this, that, and the other. They were really bad times. And now look at us, we have much more opportunities. I mean, what do you say to them? There were some things in the past which thankfully are now not with us anymore, but how would you address all that?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to address everything in the past. You're absolutely right. I mean, we've had slavery, we've had discrimination against a lot of groups, the Irish in particular, if you want to mention that. I mean, who died more on the slave ships? Not the blacks, it was the Irish, because there was no place for the Irishmen in the New World for slavery. So if any dangerous work was done by the Irish, we know what the English did for 700 years. So, people say, well, let's make this about white and black. Do you think all white people get along? If that's the case, how do you explain the antipathy between the Irish and the English? Now, look, what I'm saying is this, that there are we knew this before Christ, all right? Aristotle, not Aquinas, Aristotle gave us the idea of natural law, the idea that in your heart of hearts, everybody knows that there are some things which are absolutely wrong, okay? And then Cicero said the same thing, that you have to have virtue, Aristotle said. Cicero said that. In that sense, that's timeless. Now, all I'm saying today is that if you give the people the vital virtues, Aristotle and Cicero understood it. I don't know why the people at Harvard and Princeton can't figure it out. Then you're going to succeed. That doesn't mean that if you are a bright person, everything you do and every decision you make is going to be just. In fact, I am making the point in the book that the most well-educated people in our society are the white ruling class, and they're the ones largely responsible for some of these boneheaded policy decisions, some of which were motivated out of good intention, but in other cases, no, they didn't have good intentions. They've given up on black people, which means that they are the ultimate racists. You should treat black people as equals and not as subordinate, patronizing, condescending attitude.
Yeah, no, it's so true. You mentioned the academia and the professors and all the elites in those institutions writing their liberal tracts and so on, and influencing our culture. But doesn't it take a receptive community, a changing community, to receive those ideas? In other words, if communities, doesn't it start also from the bottom up as well? I mean, America is changing. I mean, if there was a strong enough opposition to those ideas, it doesn't matter how many professors write these awful ideas. If there's no audience, they don't get anywhere.
Well, that's true. But let's just break that down a little bit. What the people want is not necessarily in the best interest of society. I've been opposed, and I'm even more opposed now, to the legalization of marijuana. I know the public says it's okay. Does the public really know what's going on in Colorado? Have they read about the death certificates and all of young people and whatnot and everything else? People want all kinds of things. Now, I understand if you're a young man in particular, you don't want somebody to tell you what to do about your sex life. So let's have a lot of fun. Why is it that single men are the biggest supporters of a woman's right to choose? They always have been. I've been teaching this stuff for decades. I used to say to my students in family relations, many of them were nurses, I said, is it because the young guys are secret feminists and you just didn't know that? Or does the young guy say to himself, yeah, let's keep abortion legal, because if I get in some trouble, here, honey, here's $250, get rid of it on your lunch hour. I don't want to hear about it. So people have to understand there are other motives for the same kinds of things that other people may want.
Yeah. So the Catholic League obviously takes a very strong position, and kudos to you for defending the faith. Where do you see the role of the Catholic Church in all of this? It's been beset by scandal, by shocking controversy, dwindling support, less people at the pews going to mass and so on, and a lot of questions about the hierarchy. I mean, has that played any part in all of this disaster we see around us in America?
Oh, without question. Look, the book that I wrote previous to War and Virtue is called The Truth About Clergy Sexual Abuse, clarifying the facts, okay? And so I went through all of this, and I am not going to exculpate or take away responsibility from those bishops who made some lousy decisions and some of the predatory priests. But 25% of all the molesting priests were committed by 149 people. Most priests are good men, and they have been maligned and smeared as a result of what's been going on. And I looked at the John Jay studies. I know who's 81% of all the molesters are homosexuals. Now, somebody will say to you, oh, wait a minute, Donohue's not telling you that John Jay researchers, they didn't say that homosexuality was responsible. Oh, here's the answer to that. They don't deny that men had sex with post-pubescent men. They don't deny it because you can't deny it. That's called homosexuality. What they're saying as a way now to get out of it for the left, they're saying, well, not all of the men identified as being homosexual. Oh, so if they all identified as straight, would we have a straight problem? Look, self-identification is not dispositive. It's an interesting psychological variable. But when a man has sex with a post-pubescent man, that's homosexuality. So stop trying to dance around it with this subjectivism. Well, he didn't regard himself as a homosexual. If he regarded himself as a caterpillar, would you accept that? Or as a giraffe? But now we're talking about bestiality. Look, the question is this. The Catholic Church didn't handle things right in the 60s, 70s, and 80s at the time of the sexual revolution. It was and I'm not saying most gays. What I'm saying is this. Most gays are good people, including gay priests. But most of the molestation was committed by gay priests, okay? So you have to separate these things out. I'm not in here to bash all gays or gay priests. I am simply saying this. If you have a problem, you better make sure you have the right diagnosis. This is what the left does. To pretend that this was not a gay-driven scandal, and that they were going after adolescent boys, not girls, and quite frankly, even in fairness to the molesters, they weren't going after the little ones. Only 3.5% was pedophilia. Now, I agree, every case is wrong. But let's face it, we've made tremendous progress since the 1980s, particularly the 90s, and in this century, we're down to single figures in terms of the credible accusations made against 50,000, almost 50,000 members of the clergy. So the public schools is where the damage is being done today. No one seems to care about it, so there's a lot of phoniness going on there. But yeah, the Catholic voice needs to be stronger. Now, I know that they've been intimidated and the like, and I keep trying to say, fellas, you got to buck up on this. Who comes to the table with his hands clean? None of us do. But that's what the left wants. They want to silence the moral voice of the Catholic Church, of evangelicals, of Orthodox Jews, of most practicing Muslims and Mormons, people who believe in traditional moral values. They want the triumph of secularism. Triumph of secularism has created more problems, from sexual transmitted diseases to AIDS. That's where you got it from. You didn't get it from what we're doing. Remember, every single lousy priest who put his hands on a minor did so because he violated the teachings of the Catholic Church. He didn't practice them. There's nothing wrong with the teachings. There's something wrong with some of the teachings.
Right, he violated, as you say. And, we don't have enough time to talk about this, but then we had the situation with ex-Cardinal McCarrick. That shocked a lot of people, that he could be in leadership for so long.
And I have a big section in my book, the previous book, the Truth About Clergy Sexual Abuse, on that. And there I put part of the problem, a lot of it had to do with some people in Rome who didn't let the right voice be heard on that. But we can go back over that. It was a great fundraiser, and he got a pass. And there's a cover up. I mean, cops cover up for each other, lawyers cover up for each other, politicians cover up for each other. I'm not saying it's right. It's almost like it's breaking news if they find out that there's a sinner in the Catholic Church who's a priest.
Yeah. Can we get a little political now? So the Democrats on the left are, members of the ruling elite support the Democratic Party, and then typically on the right with the Republican Party, it's more pro-family, pro-life, traditional values. Does it break out that way now, or is there equal opportunity offenders in both parties?
Well, you'll find equal opportunities in both parties, of course, but overwhelmingly, the Democrats are the party of secularists. There was a poll that came out in March by Pew which showed by a narrow margin that Democrats thought more unfavorably than favorably of Roman Catholics. Okay? They are the secularists. They are the ones who believe in legalizing prostitution and abortion. They are the ones who want to close down the Catholic hospitals and the doctors. It's called the Equality Act. Biden is in favor of it. Never have I seen a more anti-Catholic president in my lifetime than Joe Biden. I don't care how many rosaries he carries around with him in his pocket. Trump was not exactly a religious guy, let's face it, or practicing, but he was religion friendly when it came to court appointees and determining policy. I am less concerned about someone's interior life. That's between him and God. Yeah. It's my job to be concerned about the policy decisions that are being rendered. But when I see Biden administration is working against parental consent, that it wants to shut down the Catholic hospital, that on day one of the Biden administration, he signed 17 executive orders, one of which is to say boys and girls can use each other's bathrooms, locker rooms, and they can play in the other team's sports. I mean, boy, this is they're stepping on the gas. Now, the Democrats, unfortunately, I came from a family of Irish who moved over from the Bronx, and my grandparents helped raise me, and everybody was a Democrat. Nobody in his right mind would be a Republican. Yeah. And so, but things have changed. The Republican Party was the party of pro-abortion. People forget that before it was legalized. And in the 1970s, a major flip. The Democratic Party, which was against abortion, came out in favor of abortion. And the Republican Party, which is in favor of abortion, came out against abortion. The 70s was a dramatic flip-flop.
Yeah, it's totally remarkable the way you mention it there. And interesting, you mentioned Joe Biden. He was over in Ireland recently and prayed at Knock. And I don't know, I guess we shouldn't judge anybody's faith, but somewhat ironic given all he supports in America, the liberal policies.
Yeah, it is. It's, again, he, Nancy Pelosi, another Catholic, they've never seen abortion they couldn't justify. The lust for abortion is absolutely through the roof. And I know there are other issues besides that. I'm very much aware of that. But quite frankly, this is not a Catholic-friendly administration. And the commitment to the transgender cause, which I regard as child abuse. When you deal with little kids and you're telling little kids to question whether you're happy being a boy or girl, and we're going to help you transition without parental consent on top of that, that's almost exclusively members of the Democratic Party. Not all Democrats in America, that's for sure, and not all members of the Democratic Party. But it's not being championed by Republicans. It's being championed by Democrats, unfortunately.
Why have we become so radical in that regard, this whole transgender movement, even transhumanism? Is that this whole notion of equality? Let everybody do what they want. Don't interfere. It's not a good thing. They know what they want. Is that where this is driving all this?
It's a good part of it. But let's go back to something I said just a little earlier. It's what's yielded by postmodernism. The idea that truth is a fiction. So a man can be a woman. Yeah, why not? A man can get pregnant. You can believe anything. You can flap your arms and you can believe you're flying up in the sky, I guess. Once truth doesn't matter, all things are possible, including a lot of bad, nefarious things. And you put that with the radical egalitarianism, they don't believe in, and you mentioned moral relativism here a while ago. Yeah, they don't believe there's any hierarchy of values. They believe that every attitude is the same. And I used to say this to students. When I taught at Carnegie Mellon University, I gave some courses there. And I met these students said to me, wow, you think America is a great place, don't you? I said, yeah, I do. I'm a veteran. Exactly. And you think we're the best country in the world? I said, absolutely we are. And you think that Western culture is the best? I said, yep, you're right again. And they just started to laugh and sneer. I said, wait a minute, hold on now. Hold on here just a second. So you're saying that all cultures are equal? I said, yeah, now we got it. I said, okay, I'm just going to ask you one question. So in this country, we put pizza into ovens, and in Nazi Germany, they put Jews into ovens. That's just a matter of different strokes for different folks. Everybody's equal. Oh, you should see the look of horror on their face. No, that's wrong. I said, no. I am not wrong. I gave a logical example from your principle, which is that all cultures are equal, and you're smug when I say that they're not. Maybe you need to rethink your first principles, people here, because that's what you get when you think that you can't can't make the argument that that fibrillation is wrong, that cutting is wrong, that persecuting innocent people is wrong, that putting Jews into ovens is wrong, unless you admit there is such a thing as right and wrong. Now, they might say, well, where does he get that? Well, I get it from my religion. I get it from the 10 Commandments. I get it from God. I know you don't believe in God, which is why you're back to where we started from. You believe in whatever you think is right and wrong. Be careful. Jeffrey Dahmer had no problem killing his innocent victims and then eating them for dinner. Who are you to tell him that he was wrong?
You also write in your book, the state has destroyed the power of the family. It has undermined the family structure. I want to ask you, where are we headed now in the coming years? Are we at a tipping point? Can we save ourselves from just collapse? How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that question. You know, John, I've been asked that same question now by a lot of people who have read my book, War and Virtue, over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, it's a good question. Here's my answer to that. It's unresolved. The culture's up for grabs. I know it's not going in the right direction, but there are some very encouraging things going our way. We just saw the last week the revolt against Bud Light, trying to tell people that you have to have a transgender and accept that as a. There's all kinds of examples that I could give on this thing. This thing is not over. It's going to wind up, and how it'll wind up, I'm not exactly certain. I can tell you this much. You have two choices. You either can quit or you can fight. For me, it's very simple. And I do see some encouraging signs on the horizon. On the transgender thing, the Europeans are way ahead of us. They started with this madness back in Sweden and others in the 60s. They are moving away from it. We have Erica Anderson, the first transgender psychiatrist in this country who pushed for the transgenderism in the schools. You know what she says now? Count me out. It's gone too far. Blacks say, we don't want to defund the police. We don't want to abolish the prisons. Hispanics say, you don't tell me that I am Latinx. I'm Latino, male, or I'm Latina, female. There's no X just because you don't believe there's a difference between men and women. And guess what? They've had to drop that. Now, this is going to be a big fight, because what I'm saying to the average American is this. You have to have some respect for authority. You have to, don't become cynical of all the elites. But I am asking you this, become skeptical. The people with the alphabet after their name, Ph.D., Esquire, master's degree, a doctor, be skeptical. If they're telling you something which your gut tells you is wrong, trust your gut, not the expert, and then continue to read and find out. We've been down this road too far now, where the elites, too many of them, have given us wrong information, whether it's about COVID or education or crime or the family or whatever it is. And most people have common sense. So trust your gut, not Mr. Expert.
We're going to wrap up very soon. We're almost out of time, Bill, and this is a great conversation. The Catholic League is based out of New York City.
Yes.
It's an influential, powerful, politically strong, wealthy, and highly liberal center of power in America, just like San Francisco. I'm wondering what you see as the future roles of these big metro areas, where all change in American society, it appears to me, starts at. I mean, they're culture pushers, New York. Can we change the culture in these two cities, New York and San Francisco? What role do they play?
It's very difficult to do that, but it's not impossible. There's no iron law in history. It's like turning the Queen Mary, though, to get it back to, you can easily crash things, okay? It's like the little boy who builds the erect set. It takes him forever to build it, to build the building. It takes how long to smash it? That's where we're at today. We have to put it back together again. I am not saying that we can't, but unfortunately, the so-called progressive policies of Seattle and in Portland and New York and Chicago, they've created this problem. On the other hand, as I detail in the War on Virtue, a lot of second thoughts going on in Seattle and in Portland and in New York and other places in Philadelphia. A lot of people are tapping the brakes and saying, have we gone too far on this? You have Bobby Rush. People may not know him. Bobby Rush was a congressman in Chicago. Before that, as he was a young man, he was a member of the Black Panthers. he came out against Lori Lightfoot in favor of the white guy who lost in the election because the teachers union basically bought the election for the new mayor. He says, our people, the blood is running in the streets of black people. We've got to stop this. Now we have to get to more people, but there are some important signs on the horizon. If even Bill Maher can come to the conclusion that transgenderism is a fiction, there's hope for all of us.
Yeah, and we might be reaching some kind of point of social exhaustion where the population that's deeply affected, the black community and those in the inner cities, the so-called inner cities, are losing their children. There's drug epidemics and all kinds of problems because of the bad policies. And maybe people are wakening up.
Well, the right word is the one you used. It's exhaustion. Yes, people are tired of it. They've seen too much of it. They've gone along with the liberal left agenda for a long time, keep thinking that that was the answer, but they're beginning to change. When the New York Times just last month allowed an op-ed to be written by an undergraduate student at Princeton who said, our professors are pushing us in the Ivy League to the right because it's gone too far. Then you begin to see these are little small anecdotes. I understand that, but they're also very telling of what the way the country is going to go. I could have retired by now a long time ago. I could retire. I can't retire. I still have the passion. The country's in trouble. We do have a nice following, and we can't do it alone. We may be the generals, but without the troops, you don't win a war. And that's the American people and the average American Catholic who's a good person.
Bill Donohue, keep up the fantastic work. The name of your book is The War on Virtue, How the Ruling Class is Killing the American Dream. It's published by Sophia Institute Press. You can get it on Amazon or wherever good books are sold.
Thank you so much, John. It's been my pleasure to be with you, buddy.
Thank you.